All right, so we should be live, but I'll give it a second to wait for it to me to be able to see it on YouTube. Gotta love the delay. Come on, any second. There we go. All right. Well, at least it's playing an ad. There we go. All right. So it looks like we're actually live. So good to see you guys. Michael J. Crawford here, and I just a little while ago finished watching Loki season 1, episode 1. Was it Some Glorious Purpose? Great name for an episode about Loki. And so we're going to get into this, but I want to say a couple of things, because like I saw what Cartoon Man said in the chat as far as was concerned, that like I'm just going to be reporting the Fandom Menace. No, not at all. That was just the thumbnail is just meant to be as a joke. I do not know, nor do I really particularly care how the Fandom Menace reacted to it. But as soon as I saw that character, I could already see hundreds of videos probably prominently using the term MCU and stuff like that. Which is just silly to me, because if it's about the story, not about the gender or race of a character, then let it be that. And yes, Thomas, lighting is a little low. That is intentional. I've got a little bit of a headache, and the bright lights are a bit much for me right now. So I apologize for the muted tones in here, but I just need that for my own comfort level right now. Anyway, and yes, Thomas, Mephisto completely confirmed now. We'll get into that in a few minutes. So, Sci-Fi Sith is in the house. Hey, yes, I've been around. If you've looked around for me, I've been online a few times here and there, and just not as much as usual or as regularly as I would like to. Mountains of Elysium says, greetings, Anti-Tracker and fellow nerds. Free Anti. Martok was a changeling, and Mama Prey is a saint. I agree on some of that, but Auntie is completely free. As you can see, she's diligently napping as usual. Martok was a changeling, but only when he said Hail Kuroga, and Mama Prey is a saint. There's no denying that. All right, so, and Fortune says Loki is and always was a fun character. I agree. I'll tell you straight up. So I'm not going to bury the lead as far as my own personal opinion on it. I think that now, so far, I've liked pretty much everything that Marvel has done. The worst case for them was kind of meh with Captain Marvel, but other than that, I can say I've genuinely enjoyed pretty much everything that Marvel has put out, and yes, that includes WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier. This is no exception, and in fact, as far as the streaming shows that Marvel has put out, I think this one is kicking off to the strongest start of the three. I thought I had a great time from beginning to end. I thought it was a lot of fun, and we'll get into it in just a moment here, but as you can see, there's a little still image from there, and I'll be skipping around through it to kind of keep me on track, because I get so discombobulated so easily. I figured that was the only way for me to remember where the heck we are in the actual story. So we open up the episode with a flashback to 2012, and it's the altered 2012 from Avengers Endgame. So this is the variant of the original Avengers that Endgame already altered with the time heist that they were attempting to commit to regain the Infinity Stones. And that's just kind of to refresh people as far as how did Loki, because didn't Loki die? How is he even here? That kind of thing. And I think that went pretty much as we would expect. We get the standard Marvel logo, and then we skip to the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. Now, with this, I was kind of expecting to see a date, since they started with 2012. I was like, oh, but then I thought about it, and Loki only has the time stone, or not the space stone, not the time stone, which means that he can't travel through time at this point. He can just teleport to a different location. And so this would be the Gobi Desert, Mongolia in 2012. And so that it took me a minute to kind of catch that, but that's kind of where I was thinking with it. And Thomas says, and they told Loki who they were. I had the same reaction. Oh yeah. It was like, huh? What? Absolutely. We'll get to that in just a minute here. So Loki appears in the Gobi Desert, and Loki, being Loki, after he struggles to regain consciousness, immediately starts to try to basically pontificate and rule over the local Mongolians, because he's Loki. That's what Loki's going to do, right? So, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, come what they call Minutemen, who are these temporal agents. And so their job, as we learn in this episode, is to protect what they refer to as the sacred timeline. And so they're basically, they caught what they see as a variance, which is basically a variant incarnation of Loki. Loki basically acting outside of what the timeline was supposed to have him do, and so their job is to bring him in and reset anything affected by him so that the timeline follows its normal preset destination. And so that's when we are introduced to this lady right here. Now, she's not really a deep character or anything. She's just basically timeline enforcement agent number 37 or whatever. And I know she's like Hunter U51 or something like that. I can't remember the exact name. But I want to say a couple of things about her real quick, because I do get the feeling that some people out there are going to have a major hang-up about her character. I didn't, for a couple of reasons. One, she's not even, I mean, maybe she'll have more stuff to do later on, but she's a second-tier character at best. She's not even the main temporal agent of this episode. That would be Owen Wilson's character. But and people saying, oh, well, yeah, but look at the way she, beat the snot out of Loki and stuff. And after all, Loki, not only is Loki a man, Loki is an Asgardian, and she is clearly kind of heavy set, so she's not like a bodybuilder looking thing, right? And in fact, Thomas just put, not Thomas Potts, but Thomas Colin put just exactly the kind of reaction that I would expect from many people. And by the way, please don't refrain from that type of language in the chat. We don't need to be calling people names if we want to say what we're thinking about. Anyway, so now I will say this. Is she large? Absolutely. However, if you're going to say that she could not effectively do what she did in this episode, then I'm assuming then you would say the exact same thing, Thomas Cullen, since you're here. You would say the exact same thing about Andre the Giant, right? After all, big, heavy-set guy, clearly not cut, right? He was just big. And that's kind of the same thing with her. She doesn't look like she's not, flubbery fat. She's just really, really big. And so, and if you look at her, look at her arms, you look at her neck, she is not just a blubber, right? She is not just fat. She is just a large person. And so, the fact that she's big and she moves and throws down doesn't bother me at all. And I would dare say that if she were to, based on what we see of her size and general agility in this episode, most of us would not be able to hold her back in a fight. So the other thing about that is that these are not humans, nor are they Asgardians. We don't know exactly what they are. We do know they're wielding technology that is so far beyond anything that even Loki has ever seen. But And so, her baton can literally disintegrate pretty much anything that it comes into contact with. They can control time as they see fit. They can reset the time-space continuum whenever they want. And we don't even know what their physical ability is as far as how physically strong they are. Like, if she were to take on Thor, we don't know how that fight would go. So I think that to simply laugh at her because she's large or heavy set, whatever. And so that didn't bother me in the slightest. I thought that she, and Tom's, Andre was 7'4". She's barely 6 feet. Okay, how many 6 foot tall women do you know, Thomas? I mean, you're making it sound like, oh, she's just 6 feet tall. And look, and I'm sorry, 6 foot and as thick as she is, she could take somebody down. If she's 6 feet tall, I didn't know how tall she was, but if she's actually 6 feet tall and that kind of a build, if she knew how to use her mass, yes, she could absolutely take you down. Anyway. But I'm not going to sit here arguing about her. I just want, if we're going to dismiss the show because of her character, then you are exactly what the SJWs accuse you of being. Because it's not like, exactly, approximately like Roz from Night Court. Roz from Night Court could have taken some people down too. Just because she was big doesn't mean, that she was incapable. And in fact, that's the funny thing about it. Proxima, one thing you kind of nailed is that we assume that, for example, in order for someone to be able to throw down, they need to be cut like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Or Jean-Claude Van Damme or Stallone. But in the real world, people that kick all sorts of butt don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jean-Claude Van Damme. And in fact, most people who are professional bodybuilders know this very well, is that when they look their absolute mightiest is when they are at their absolute weakest. You have to have some fat around you in order to maintain any kind of energy in your body. The reason they actually starve themselves for those types of competitions to make the muscles pop more, and it makes them look more imposing, but they're actually weakening themselves. Anyway, so let us move on. So she slaps on a temporal control collar on Loki, and she uses her baton. And this is where I was saying, like, their abilities are insane. She uses her baton and smacks him down, and to where he slows down to 1/16 normal speed, and yet can feel it and sense it in real time. That's messed up. And while he's going through that, she obviously slaps the collar on him to keep him under control so he can't use his powers, and they can teleport him to any time they need him to be. Donnie's in the house. Good to see you, my friend, and hope that you're doing well. All right, so then the Mongolians watch as they disappear. So then they end up at the what I can't remember what this place is called, the temporal something. And let me see if I can find it. This temporal facility where these people work, and we don't know where or what it is exactly at this point. Only that it appears to be outside of what, the time-space continuum as we know it. It is run by these people that were created by these three elders that are in charge of the sacred timeline, the Time Variance Authority. Thank you, John. My memory, that's the problem. My brain just does not work very well sometimes. Now, the Time Variance Authority, run by these three godlike beings, and looking at the faces that we see carved in the wall and the statues that we've seen and stuff, I'm getting definite Living Tribunal vibes from Marvel. If you don't know what the Living Tribunal is, there was a passing reference to the Living Tribunal in Doctor Strange when Mordo used the staff of the Living Tribunal, I think it was, and he's a three-headed godlike being. Like, he's Galactus looks up to this guy, and in fact, he's pretty much the most powerful thing and depending on which phase of Marvel you're reading. The Living Tribunal is one of the most powerful beings in all of existence. And I think the only one above the Living Tribunal is what they call the one above all, which would be uppercase G, God. So that's, as far as, if that is the Living Tribunal, then that means there is nothing that anybody would ever be able to do to stop them. And yeah, you don't ask Matthew, because it's the Federation of Galactic Time. You're probably right about that. And that's no problem, Stan. I'm not going to delete the stream. So yeah, if you want to watch this after, and by the way, I should have said this already, since we're only a few minutes in, heavy spoilers coming. So do not watch this if you don't want spoilers from Loki episode 1, Glorious Purpose. You have been warned, and thank you again, Stan. So that weird-looking monstrosity behind Loki strips him of his clothes, puts him in a prison uniform, and drops him into an office where he has to... And this was in the trailer, where he basically just has to sign off that this is everything he's ever said. And... a cute little gag where he says "what," and then it prints another sheet of paper. Okay, there's you got to add that to it. And there's no real. It's just a gag. Maybe it'll come back later, but there's no real point to that other than just being a quick gag, as he is then processed by this guy, who asks him if he is in fact a living organic creature. Does he have a soul, to the best of his knowledge, that kind of thing. And so he goes through the robot detector and then is processed for trial. And he gets to see a fun-filled animation explaining exactly what the Time Variance Authority does and who they are in a... very it was like that DNA cartoon from Jurassic Park, or kind of like some of the stuff you see in Fallout, just a very tongue-in-cheek animation telling you the backstory of how the timelines were all corrupted. And then these are the three beings that they say are running the whole thing. But I'm still thinking that these three beings are in fact the one being, the Living Tribunal. And I would go so far, and now I will say this: I am not LDG Pixels. If that is not the Living Tribunal, if it's something, I don't know, maybe it's something they invented in the MCU, maybe it's something else. And thank you, Alex. Yes, Mr. DNA. Maybe it's something that they invented for the MCU. Maybe it's something that came in Marvel Comics after I stopped reading Marvel Comics in the late 80s. Either way, let me double check this. I just got a text message. Just want to make sure it's nothing urgent. Yeah. I took my medication. Okay. Oh, that's funny. So now I get a code. Mrs. Antichecker was asking me about this code a while ago. So let me send this to Mrs. Antichecker. Now that, yes, I took my medicine. Thank you. And go back, paste. Figures, right? All right, I'm trying to do a live stream here. All right, there. Oh, there we go. Anyway, so if it is a Living Tribunal, if it's something they made up, if it's something that came later, I'm fine with it. I just definitely get Living Tribunal vibes from it, and that would kind of make sense with what they're going with here. And so the animation kind of explains how the whole thing with variance works. And then, Loki is, of course, protesting. And they take him to... we get our opening little credit of the Loki logo, which is constantly shifting. I'm assuming we're going to see some changes in the timeline as time goes on here. We then get introduced to Owen Wilson's character, one of the employees of the Time Variance Authority. And I don't remember his name either at this point, but I'm sure that they will become more familiar as time goes on. And he's investigating the assassination of Minutemen, like the lady that we saw that took down Loki. These people are getting offed. And Alex said there might be 3 different variants of Kang. I I don't think it's Kang, just because I don't get the vibe that the Time Authority is evil. And Kang is, I mean, I know Kang's been written different ways, but Kang has always come across as someone who's just basically trying to work for his own selfish gain, and he uses time. And thank you, Morbius, or Mobius. Man, John, you should be hosting the show. But anyway, so yeah, Owen Wilson's Mobius character is investigating the murder of these Minutemen and trying to figure out what's going on with this 16th century. And thank you, JD Breezer is following me over on Twitch. I appreciate that. He's so some 16th century shenanigans are going on. He's investigating it, and when they're trying to figure out what's going on, we get this little shot. And this is what about Kodos? Yeah, and this is where Thomas Potts was joking earlier about the fact that you see the devil in that stained glass, and the kid was indicating that the person that killed the time variance agents was that person. And so I'm sure that LDG will be immediately thinking it must be Mephisto, even though we find out by the end of this very episode that that's clearly not who it is. And while I know you can't really see it very well in the little reduced image there, it does have rather striking horns that are also very similar to a certain not Asgardian's helmet. Let's see if we can get the better shot of the stained glass there. It's hard to see. But yeah, it's, in the meantime, they've apprehended, this variant Loki, and they bring it to Mobius's, and yes, John, it's Manifesto 100%. So they bring that to Mobius's attention, that they've apprehended Loki, and so he intervenes at Loki's trial, because Loki is about to be offed. Basically, which makes sense, because what they do is these variants, they need to delete them. I can't remember the term they use. I'm sure John DeMarco will remember, that they use for basically erasing someone from the timeline. And they're planning on doing that to him, but instead, Mobius pleads to the court to get him remanded under his custody. This is the judge that we see, and you see the faces behind her. Those look a lot like the Living Tribunal. And in fact, let me see if I can real quick bring up an image of the Living Tribunal. See if I can get a good image of him here. So this is the Living Tribunal in the comics, and as I messed that up there, and the faces alter depending on what's going, because he's a 3-in-1 kind of being. And you see those faces behind her look very much like the Living Tribunal's face. And so that's where I'm thinking they're going with it. DX says, I'm a little confused. Isn't Loki a god? Forgive me, I know where well, Loki is the Norse god of mischief. That is the character that Tom Hiddleston is playing, is that Loki. However, there are gods and there are gods. On the cosmic being pantheon of Marvel, the Asgardians, who are the gods of Norse mythology, are very low power, except for some of them. If you look at Odin, who's the most powerful Asgardian, is up there at times, but most time even Odin doesn't compare to beings like Odin can probably go toe-to-toe with Galactus sometimes, depending on who's writing. However, then we get way above Galactus when you get into Love and Hate. You get eternity, and then you get the living tribunal. The living tribunal is, number 2 on the entire pantheon. So it's not as simple as, well, he's a god, therefore. And you're right. Loki is technically a giant. However, he considers himself a god because he was raised as guardian. And even like in as far as in the comic books, their attitude, the Asgardians, like Odin said this in the second Thor film, is that they're not gods; they're just very powerful beings, And so, and Loki and frost giants apparently share Asgardian long lifespans, since Loki is at least as old as Thor. And they don't seem to, it's not like Loki died 1,000 years ago. So there's that. All right. So moving on, as they're about to pronounce sentence on Loki, and in fact, she does pronounce sentence on Loki, but Owen's Mobius, I keep saying Morbius, it's Mobius, intervenes and takes him into custody. Very lucky for Loki. And then we get to see their city. And this city is beautiful, I gotta see. Max says, what about the Beyonder? The Beyonder is not of this universe in the comics. The Beyonder is from another universe. And the original concept of the Beyonder, I know he's changed, but the original concept of the Beyonder is from another universe where he encompasses the entire universe. He is basically another universe's equivalent of eternity. And eternity is below the living tribunal as far as power levels. So Beyonder is up there, but he's not at the living tribunal level of power. And anyway, so back to it here. Oh, and thank you. View from Lookout puts in a couple of pounds. Says, hey, Antrick, I hope you're doing okay. I'm hanging in there best I can. Enjoyed the first episode of Loki. Right now, I'm still waiting. I got a message from my doctor earlier today. We're still waiting for some of the test results. So, I will post a video updating my health situation as soon as I know everything. But of course, especially for those of you that are believers, keep Positive Candor in your prayers. Keep Bird of Prey 5 in your prayers, because both of them are having serious health issues as well. And I'm trying not to dwell on the negative, but that's all I know at this point, is we're still waiting for test results. So the city that they're looking at is absolutely mind-blowing. And right there you see the statue. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the statue of the 3 Keepers of Time here. And again, the way they're facing back to back to back, it looks very much like the Living Tribunal, just if the Living Tribunal had 3 separate bodies for each of its heads. Because that's the configuration that the Living Tribunal's heads are always in, is that pattern of 3 right there. So, but the city is absolutely gorgeous. I love the design here, and I'm curious to see if we're gonna learn anything more about it as time goes on. So, Owen then takes Loki to his office, and he starts basically poking Loki really, really effective. I mean, it's obvious that Mobius knows who Loki is, because he's purposely pushing his buttons, asking him questions. Yeah, the Keepers of Time, thank you. Asking him questions that he knows is going to provoke him, he knows is going to piss him off, and just going into it over and over and over about how, about all the things, do you enjoy killing people? Seems like you're enjoying this, right? And then pointing out, that he's responsible for his own mother's death, even though that hasn't happened yet from his perspective. Shows him a few, I do say I gotta love the fact and that the big reveal that Loki is in fact D.B. Cooper, and that was a funny little moment. But just talking about how Loki is always doing stuff. And this is D.B. Cooper's grand escape from the airplane. And what we didn't know, I'm going to play this little clip so you can see Loki jumps from the airplane and the Bifrost takes him away. Loved it. Absolutely loved that. best DB Cooper reference ever. So Loki then, or Morbius is called away from the office because there's been another incident. What Mobius doesn't realize is that Loki swiped his little time control device and uses it to escape and causes a little bit of mayhem. But then he finds out that these people, I mean, like, they literally use Infinity Stones as paperweights. These guys are... These guys are so powerful that to them, things like the Infinity Gauntlet is nothing. And so, I think that, and I love the fact that Casey, the guy that's showing him these Infinity Stones, is like, oh yeah, we get Infinity Stones all the time. They're no big deal. And Aravic says, Jolan True, my friend. I bumped into the microphone. Hope you're doing well. And so, but Loki realizes that there is no escaping from this. Now, here's another scene with that one lady where she tries to take Loki down, but this time Loki's got the upper hand because of the fact that he can teleport around using their own technology against them. And that's a good question. I don't know that Balder will be introduced in this, but I do think we're gonna get, and I do. I think that we're seeing a pattern here with Marvel, because between what we saw in WandaVision, what we're seeing here, what we know about Doctor Strange, what we know about the next Spider-Man movie, it seems like the multiverse is going to be the theme of this next phase or couple of phases of Marvel. So, and hopefully that's where somehow how they're going to bring in the Fantastic Four. I don't know what they're going to do there, but I'm very interested to see what's going to happen moving forward. Anyway, she tries to take Loki down, but he's using their own tech against them. And then Loki goes back and starts watching the video footage of his own life that he has not yet lived. Hey, Bird, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. And I know you're planning on streaming in about a half an hour, Bird. I'll probably be done by then, so no intent on stepping on your toes, my friend. In fact, I wanted to get started earlier, but took me a while to get the download of the Loki footage so that I could show the pictures. Anyway, so we have some really touching, and this is actually some of the best character development I think we've seen in Loki for all of the MCU, and that is the fact that you could see in him not only his regret, which you would expect that when he realizes that he caused Frigga's death, his adopted mother, but also a sense of pride that he worked side by side with Thor on a couple of occasions with some of the footage that we saw from Ragnarok and stuff. And ultimately, I think that while he was horrified at his own death, I think that there's also a certain sense of redemption for Loki that he betrayed Thanos to save his brother. So Bird says, my biggest issue is when he watches the intro video. Why is Earth central to the video? Well, depending on how they're doing it, in Marvel, a lot of times they say Earth is like the nexus point of the multiverse. That's the same reason why, if you look at Doctor Strange, Dormammu really wants Earth. Same reason why Loki wanted Midgard. Because Loki could have gone anywhere to conquer, but he specifically wanted Earth. That the Infinity Stones almost seem attracted to Earth. Earth is a central point in the universe in Marvel. And John says, my observation, if this was going to be full woke, then the Black Lady cop would have easily taken down Loki, but he took her out handily. I agree. I don't think, and it's not even a woke thing. I just think that this is not an agenda-driven show. Yeah, the time agents are very diverse, but so what? What I care about is it an interesting story? Is the hook for this grabbing me? And it absolutely has. And I gotta say, the big reveal that's coming up here in a couple of minutes really sunk its teeth into me. As far as when we find out what's really going on with these time agents being offed. Anyway, so moving on, after Loki kind of, here's him seeing what happened with him and Thanos. And this is the look on Loki's face as he's watching his own death. And, this is I love the conflicted look on his face here. And I love the fact that, this sequence of Loki just watching his own life, I just think it's really solid character work on Loki. I was not expecting Loki to come across this strong of a character. And Alex, I wouldn't be surprised if Kang was a part of it, but I don't think that Kang is like the people behind any of this. I think that's either the Living Tribunal or just what they say it is. Kang could definitely come into play. Like, I could see that the other Loki that we'll get into in a minute might be working with Kang. And that might explain how Loki is so freely moving around time. Or maybe the other Loki is Kang and they just don't realize it. Then Loki has a final confrontation with the time agent, only this time he absolutely spanks her and sends her ported to another part of the facility against her will. And again, which shows you, and again, going back to some of the objections from earlier, her advantage is really about her tech. Because once Loki gets hands on the tech, she's got nothing. And Tiki of Dune says, Misa think Loki was poodoo. I don't think Loki was poodoo. That's just my opinion. However, Loki realizes he's got nowhere to go. Even though he gets the Tesseract back, he can't use it. He realizes that these people eat Infinity Stones for breakfast, that, he ain't getting out of here. And so he and Owen have a little bit more of a heart-to-heart, a more honest talk here at the end, where, he says, so you want me to help you catch this person? And that's the big reveal. Well, because the person we're trying to catch is you. And then we get this last sequence here where 4 more Minutemen are sent on a variance mission, and they are ambushed by this person who we presume is in fact Loki. Based on all the dialogue that we've gotten up to this point, that would seem to be the assumption here, is that is evil Loki, but I think that it's not. I think that is possible. I know that Alex is saying maybe it's a female Loki. That could be if we're talking about, but except that would kind of presuppose. You see, this is where I'm running into a problem with the show. So we'll speculate a little bit here. I don't think that there's a female Loki if what Mobius is talking about is being truthful. Because if there is a sacred timeline that these guys are preserving, and their little cheesy animation that showed how there was this crazy divergent timeline, and then they crunched it all into a singular timeline, means that by that definition, there aren't other timelines. So I don't think that necessarily we're going to see a female Loki. I know that's been speculated a lot. Maybe it is, but if that is the case, then they got some explaining to do. Because that would mean that there are alternate timelines in existence. But from what we've seen of this, there is in fact only one timeline. And in fact, this would actually help explain some of the mystery about what happened with with Captain America. Like, how did Captain America get back to the prime timeline? Well, it's because there really is only one timeline. They just didn't realize it. There's supposed to be, there would naturally be this divergent timeline like we think of with, like, you know, Star Trek style quantum this and that. But in actuality, these guys are making sure that there's actually only one timeline going. So I'm curious to see what they do with that. Now, the other possibility, like, this could be Kang. This could be this. So this could be evil Loki. This could be Kang. This could be someone totally different that nobody's thinking of. And I'm curious to see where it goes. But they absolutely got me with this. I think that I was really skeptical when I heard about the Loki series. Like, how are you going to make Loki the central character of a series? He's the bad guy. Is it really going to be that good? And dang if they didn't hook me with this. And so my apologies to, I'm just going to call him Evil Thomas because I don't know where he is, but Thomas, if you're still here, the not Thomas Potts Thomas, if you're still here, look, no hard feelings, buddy, but I mean, man, you seem really bitter and angry about this show. And honestly, this is the problem, is that when I watch this, and the reason that I made the thumbnail that I did for this video is I do get the feeling that people are going to be angry at this show, not because of actually any of the plot, not because of anything we just discussed, except for the fact that there's a big black woman in it that takes down Loki, and that the judge is a black woman as well, or biracial from all appearances. And quite frankly, I'd say, so what? That's not the point. The point is the story. And so, but we don't really, and man, if you're going to get angry about this kind of stuff, really get angry about the right thing. I honestly, if you want to say that the writing in this show is bad, hey, argue with me on it. I don't see it. I think the writing for this show has been, granted, we're only one episode in, but I think it's only 6 parts. So we've seen a sixth of it. And I think the writing is really, really good. So, for people that want to hate on it, I don't see it. Now, Alex brings up an interesting idea. Maybe their mission is to ensure there's only one main timeline, ensuring offshoots don't necessarily interact with it, resulting in chaos. That could be. And so and that's the thing. There's a few different ways they could spin it. And I'm very curious to see what they do, but we won't know until, everything kind of bears out over the next few episodes. And let's see, Mako says, certain people be angry because of the gender and color. Some people in the show, there's a word for those kinds of people. Well, exactly my point, Mako. And that's the problem is, look, when the Phantom Menace first kind of exploded and I was part of that, the anger was, in my opinion, like, it's about the agenda-driven stuff. It's about making the show about an agenda. This show is not about an agenda. This show has a diverse cast, but that's not the point of this show. And, and honestly, if you're just crying and whining about the gender and race of specific characters, it's like, part of me wants to be, kind of a dick about it and say, it's okay. The 2 main characters are still white men. You can breathe. It's like, really, that's what you're going to get worked up about. So I have a big problem with that kind of an attitude. On the flip side of that, I'm curious about the story. That's what I care about. And I don't know what's going to end up happening, but I'm very, very curious. Insane Hippie Insane says, Kang is usually a future descendant of the Reed family from the Fantastic Four, if I remember correctly. Kang has been a few different things, but yeah, he is from the future. He uses future tech, and he time travels like we walk across a room. And so that way he can get killed over and over, and then just say, oh, well, that was just a time duplicate Kang, that kind of thing. But we don't really know if, if they do bring Kang in, we don't know how they're going to do it. This could be a way to do it, but I don't know. Everybody was speculating about Mephisto with WandaVision, and I know a lot of people are going to speculate about Kang with this. I prefer to just take it as it comes. So if next week we find out that that's Kang, awesome sauce. If next week we find out that's female Loki, okay, let's see what they're doing with that. If next week we find out that it is just plain old evil Loki, I'm fine with that too. If it turns out to be Mephisto, hey, why not? Maybe LDG will come back to the MCU then. But the problem is that when we get too hung up on the speculation and we stop enjoying the show, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I could never pronounce your symbol. I remember you told me what it was, and now I can't remember. But timelines by functioning. Let's see. Timelines by farciating. I'm not sure if that's what I'm seeing there. Changes everything. Is there many or just one? Well, that's the problem, is that, we don't know. Is there a bunch of timelines or just one? If there's only one timeline, then that means the Ancient One and Banner in Endgame were wrong. However, which is entirely possible. However, if there's a bunch, it means that the entire time agency in this is lying, and so, which is also possible. So I'm curious. Thaddeus says, I think that by the end, Loki will be able to cheat death by Thanos. I agree. I don't think they're going to let Tom Hiddleston off the hook this easy, because I think he's too beloved a character. And let's see. I'm just hoping they take advantage of this to show us radically different versions of the MCU present day, maybe even give us a glimpse of possible future events. That would be an interesting way to go. It depends on if they're going with the many worlds idea, or if they're saying, nope, there's really only one timeline. Like, for example, there could be other dimensions, like the dark dimension where Dormammu lives, right? And so a multiverse in essence exists, but that doesn't necessarily mean alternate timelines exist, that there's only one grand timeline of the entire multiverse. We'll have to see. And so, I don't care about your race, my problem is about time. Sometimes he's tied to ancient Egypt as Apocalypse's origin. Yeah, it's changed a few times. Phi, thank you. And you meant splitting. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know because it seems like the whole point of the Time Variance Authority is to stop splitting from occurring. And so basically every time a new timeline splits off, they eradicate that from happening. And so I think what happened was, and maybe it'll eventually be revealed, if they're being legit, that when Captain America went back and decided to stay back in time, they merged him into the Prime timeline. That they actually did that for him. And Deej says, it's okay, you won't remember your name by tomorrow. That's okay, Deej. That's okay. I'll get my revenge on you on Friday. Oh, yes, I will. The director of Loki has already said that the stained glass is not a reference to Mephisto. Shh, John, let them... yeah. And Deej says, mark my words, that is the female Loki. Okay, marked. But to me, it's like, I don't care. Whatever it is, I'm game. They got me. I'm interested. And Phi says, exactly, one or infinite, right. And that's the problem. We don't know what it is yet. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this resolves itself. I'm hoping after mutants are introduced, we finally get an Age of Apocalypse film. With what they're doing, I could see them doing that. But if this time variance agency is for real, it's going to be hard to have massive alternate timeline stories. Like I think of not just Age of Apocalypse, but Days of Future Past and other great stories that involve alternate timelines, because why wouldn't they just put an end to it? And Kevin says, in all fairness, it's the studio's fault for getting people so skeptical thanks to changes in popular properties like Star Trek. Oh, don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with people being skeptical. I have a problem with people with like the rage that we saw from Thomas Colin earlier today. I hope or is it Thomas Collin? I hope I'm not butchering your name. It's not intentional. And because it's one thing to say, oh, everything that's been going on with Star Trek and Star Wars, of course Marvel's going to do the MCU. The problem there is that Marvel hasn't done it yet. We had one movie about a feminist character that had feminist tones. So what? That's one movie out of 23. And yet people are acting like every time a female character shows up, it's the apocalypse. And so that's where I get a little worked up over this. Because I think that if the story is good, I don't care. Bird says, let's see, even I knew the reveal from 2 minutes in. Also, there's no free will. Well, that's the other thing is that, not necessarily that there's no free will. It's just that if you make the wrong choice, you get ousted. And you're right, TNG did do both. There were times when there was one timeline, times when there was infinite. And I don't like that either. And if the MCU is going to be that way too, I'm not a big fan. And Bird says, so that sucks. Well, remember, it's not that like Loki has free will. It's just that their job is to make sure that he doesn't diverge from, that he doesn't end up changing what they know history is supposed to do. And, that we don't have divergent timelines. And really, where do divergent timelines come from? Mostly time travel. And so they would basically be there to stop any kind of time travel. The Time Police remind me of the same Time Police in Voyager, whatever they were called. Yes, the temporal, whatever they were, yeah. And Mark says Malcolm McDowell's Mephisto. Well, remember, it's Manifesto. Get his name right. Valor says, I don't get why people have issues with race and gender unless they are race and gender swapped. There's no reason to get upset. And, well, hold on. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Just needed to make sure that wasn't an important call. Anyway, but yeah, let's see. Why are time costumes such an advanced civilization not wearing fireproof uniforms? Well, they didn't think of it. Oh, and Valor was saying, Valor, I was starting to read, but it says, I don't know why people have issue with race and gender unless they are race and gender swapped. There's no reason. Well, and even then, as far as race and gender swaps, it depends on if it's important to the character. Like, it didn't bother me that they changed Nick Fury's race because Nick Fury's race was not really an important part of the character. It does bother me that they changed some of the Asgardians' race. So that's, that's all because they're supposed to be, Norse. They stated in the episode that the Avengers time travel was always supposed to happen. That would explain old Steve. Yeah, that's and exactly that's what I'm saying. I think that they purposely kept Steve into the prime timeline. Apocalypse needs a redo. I would agree, but I think what really needs a redo is the Abomination that was Days of Future Past. And Mako says Doctor Strange 2 is called Multiverse of Madness. My guess is Loki causes a multiverse war. I don't know if it's going to be something quite that epic, but I do think that there's more and more evidence that I think that that Doctor Strange 2 is going to involve Loki, Wanda, and possibly Spider-Man. It's quantum fire, stronger than regular fire. There you go. That's what it is. Time Police at the door. I'll be back, says Fi. Andy Trigger, I think the X-Men movies will no longer count. Well, yeah, the old X-Men movies are not part of MCU canon. But I hope that what they do with the X-Men moving forward, there's a lot of good material there, and I'd like to see a proper Days of Future Past. I'd like there to be and in fact, do Days of Future Past with not just X-Men, because that's part of, like Days of Future Past, Reed Richards' son was a big part of that story. There was a race swap in the episode of the flight attendant who took DB Cooper's note. Well, I don't know what the race of the flight attendant who took DB Cooper's note was. However, Mrs. Anti-Checker pointed out while we were watching it that, yeah, she would not be there. Because realistically, yeah, that wouldn't have happened. Fi says, comment deleted by Section 31. Uh-oh, they're onto us. Agent Danvers is the oldest looking fake old man I've ever seen. Agent Danvers is the oldest looking fake old man I've ever seen. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Bird says, but she was cute, so I don't care. Oh, okay. So I see how Bird goes. Hypnoturd isn't as powerful as it once was. Sorry, Deej. By the way, did you hear about Lower Decks Season 3 going into production? I did. I'm looking forward to it, but hey, I haven't seen Season 2 yet, so, give me Season 2, then we'll talk about Season 3. When the show with Captain Pike finally airs, will you start making reviews? Absolutely, Thaddeus, because to me, Strange New Worlds is going to make or break Trek for me. Because right now, when we look at new Trek, basically Generation 3 of Trek, the movies have been meh. I'm not a big fan of Star Trek 2009 and its sequels. They're not horrifically bad, but they're not really good either. And then with the series, we've had Discovery, which is an absolute pile of crap. We've had Picard, which was meh. And then we've had Lower Decks, which was entertaining. And so we need to get better than 1 out of 3 here. So we absolutely need to get better than 1 out of 3. So Strange New Worlds, they better hit a home run with it. Question to Trek says, beaming in, how you doing? Z says, technically, timeline and realities are not necessarily the same thing. The time agency would be policing the nexus point of this reality, important events that lead to their timeline. That's true, too. You could be talking about alternate realities without necessarily alternate timelines. Things like we've argued about in the past, the mirror universe is not an alternate timeline in Trek. It is an alternate reality. Question to Trek then says, greetings, how you doing, my friend? Jordan says, where I get mad is when they take a well-established character and change them to pattern to a certain crowd instead of creating an exciting new character. Well, exactly. Like if you were to take, what they've been talking about making quote-unquote Black Superman, right? That J.J. Abrams is supposedly directing a Superman project where they're going to not, and it's not this other black character from DC Comics that's Black Superman, but literally just making Kal-El / Clark Kent black. And yeah, I have a problem with that. Because it would be like making Steve, I don't mind Sam Wilson taking the mantle of Captain America. I would have a big problem with them making Steve Rogers black. Those are two very different things. Abomination is returning the upcoming She-Hulk show. I've heard that, and I'm looking forward to it. If they do She-Hulk right, she is a strong female character that I love from the comic books. Now, granted, I haven't read anything after, 1989, but, the last stuff with She-Hulk that I read was when she was part of the Fantastic Four. But I loved her fourth wall breaking shenanigans. I hope they do that. She's the PG-13 Deadpool before Deadpool. Great, more news stories, new universe, let go of your canon and be free. If you're talking about with alternate realities, that could be fun. And that's what the What If show is all about, so we'll see what they do there. DX2069, what a great name. Agreed, I kind of just ignored the Kelvinverse movies. Yeah, the Kelvinverse movies, the first one was fun, the second one was okay, and the third one was an abomination. And so I was like, yeah. The fact that the fourth one got canceled, I felt nothing, and that says more about it than anything else. Let's see. I just dismissed Kelvin, Timeline, Picard, and Discovery as bad holosuite programs. Well, like I said, I don't. Look, there's always going to be Trek you love and Trek you don't, right? Like from Generation 2. which is TNG through Enterprise. I'm not going to lie, not a fan of Voyager. I know some people think Voyager is great, other people don't. I don't like Voyager. However, I'm okay with Voyager's existence. I'm just not going to go out of my way to watch it for the most part. And so if Star Trek Discovery just ends up being the Voyager of Generation 3 of Trek, I'm okay with that. If Picard gets better, great. If Lower Decks continues to be fun, awesome. And if Strange New Worlds is great, great. That just means that Star Trek Discovery is the odd man out as opposed to the new norm. And Phi says this is the mirror universe. Well, I certainly hope not. Valor says, you are the real oldest old person I know. No one else has ever lived to see the rise and fall of several civilizations. Jerk. And Phi says it's all your fault. It's your fault that this is the mirror universe? So Question of Trek says, so is Loki worth watching? If you like the character Loki up to this point, absolutely. If you don't like the character of Loki, then absolutely not, because this is a Loki show. And this gets into Loki's character and has more character development in one episode for Loki than he's had in the entire MCU up to this episode. So if you like Loki, watch it. If you don't care for Loki, don't. John DeMarco said, thought that the episode was enjoyable. I loved it myself. So, I'm not going to give it an out of 10 rating because really these mini series that Marvel's doing, you have to watch the whole thing and give it a rating as opposed to individual episodes. But if I were to say, if this was a episodic show and this was just the episode that set up the premise, I would probably give it a good 7.5, 8 out of 10. It was really solid. And let's see. They have just done a drama on an English queen and race. They've just done a drama of an English queen and they race swapped her. Well, that makes no sense. Alex says, I wonder if Brian Banner will be used. They hadn't delved much into Bruce's past. I think it's essential because the abuse of childhood is at the core of Hulk's anger. Well, it depends on which version of the Hulk you're reading, though. That's the problem, is that a lot of these characters have different variants. Like with, we don't know if that's Bruce Banner's issue in the MCU version of the Hulk. Because there have been versions of the Hulk where his child abuse was core to it. There have been versions of the Hulk where it had nothing to do with it. So it just depends on who's writing. And so it's more on the jokey side, a la Thor Ragnarok. So if you like Ragnarok, I would say, I don't know. It is. It's not. I don't think it's jokey in the same way the Thor Ragnarok is, because this is really what's funny about it is honestly Loki's character, and his character feels like Loki. It doesn't feel like this is some different variant of Loki. No pun intended there. And so it's, I think that it's not like jokey, like it with Thor Ragnarok, like the whole scene where Thor's hanging by the chain and spinning around and making jokes. They changed Thor's character to be funny. Loki's character was no different in this than he was anywhere else. And let's see, Phi agrees, I assume, about the jokiness. Question of Time says, okay, cool. Alex says, Tom Hiddleston deserves so many awards. Oh, he was great. And you know what won me over to loving Tom Hiddleston just as an actor was when he showed up at Comic-Con in full Loki gear and demanded that the audience kneel. That was so awesome. Perfect cosplay ever. DS2069, again, great name, says, I love Voyager. DS9 was my favorite out of that generation. I have high hope for Picard. Maybe I'm crazy, though. Well, no, it's all right. So, like, for me, Generation 2, DS9 was my favorite. And followed probably by Enterprise. But Voyager and TNG kind of fight it off to be who's at the bottom. But generally speaking, TNG was great at some points, was crap at some points. Voyager just never hooked me. And so I never, because Voyager, when they started out with the premise of the Maquis crew and the the Starfleet crew kind of melding, I was like, okay, cool idea. And then, like, within a couple episodes, everybody's just singing Kumbaya, and it's just another Starfleet ship. And Deej says, Antitracker needs to sign paperwork every time he speaks a word. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt, I will tell you. Hiddleston will make a great master in Doctor Who. I agree. I think Hiddleston would make a great master. And Bird says, DS9 is the best. Speaking of which, talk to you later. Yes. So Bird is about to start his stream where he's going to be watching some Deep Space Nine, which he is prone to do on Wednesdays. And Fi, I agree. DS9 would not exist without TNG, but that doesn't make TNG good. There are lots of people that think that the original like Star Trek, the original series has always been my favorite Star Trek and probably always will be. However, there are lots of people that love Star Trek but think the original series is pure garbage. And while I disagree with them, that's perfectly okay. The fact that it basically gave birth to the rest of the shows, well, that's great. So you can respect it for that, but that doesn't mean it's a good show. And, oh my God, your bookshelf is on fire. Don't worry. I'm pretty sure that the bookshelf is not on fire. Good to see you, Tim. And John, I agree with that. A lot of Voyager wasn't bad per se, but wasn't memorable. That's the thing. Voyager just never got great. Scorpion was the closest they came, in my opinion. Is that Beagle Bites being cooked? No, that's just a scented candle. I like scented candles. I mean, it's just because I'm old. Count Arthur Strong for my 14th Doctor. Count Arthur Strong. I'm not even sure who that is. John DeMarco puts a link to Bird's Dream. Thank you very much. Go ahead and join him. I'm going to be wrapping up in just a minute here, but if you want a fun time with some Deep Space Nine silliness, go watch Bird of Prey, and he'll have a stream room so you can watch the Deep Space Nine. Yeah. I like when they hit Warp 10 and became salamanders. Do you now? Oh, where'd I put that stupid thing? It's not on the bookshelf, right? So, where is it? I don't see it. I showed it off the other day. I actually have somewhere in this very room, but now I can't find it. I must have set it somewhere out of reach. But I actually have the official Deep Space Nine action figure of Tom Paris as a salamander. No joke. And it comes with 3 salamander babies in the box. So, yeah. And Star Trek, the title says it all. Okay. DX says, I think Voyager and TNG were kind of the same show, really. I love DS9 because its dark premise all the way through the series. Enterprise was amazing. It wasn't given a chance. I don't necessarily like DS9. I don't think DS9 was as dark as a lot of people do. DS9 had some very dark moments, but I don't think it was a dark show. In fact, in some ways, I think it was the most optimistic of all Trek. It's a scented Beagle Bites candle. No, that's only in Kuroga. What's your favorite Maquis-centric episode of DS9? None. I do not care for the Maquis. TOS is my favorite babysitter. It was my favorite babysitter. Oh, man, you guys are silly. All right, guys, so I'm going to wrap it up there. So, long story short, if you haven't watched Loki yet, give it a try, assuming you have Disney+. And I honestly loved it, and I'm really looking forward to next week. And so we'll see what happens in a week from now. Since a few people seem to like watching this live review, what I may do next week is, if I'm still off work, which I probably will be, I may do a middle of the night stream, if you guys are interested in doing one just a few hours after it comes out, like really early in the morning or something. But without that, guys, live long and prosper, Jolan True, and don't forget to wipe.